Trustee Chandra will join us in due course.
Recording in progress.
Mr. Chair, he's coming in now.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Trustee Horowitz, I'm here.
Great to have you. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Federated Retirement and Healthcare Trust Board meeting of February 17th, 2022. And we will have a roll call of the members. Trustee Chandra.
Present.
Trustee Orr.
Present.
Vice Chair Jennings.
Present.
Trustee Kelleher is not present. Trustee Linder.
I'm present.
And I, Chair Horowitz, is present.
Trustee Horowitz, I have a point of order question. I just found out this morning that I have a flat tire and I need my car operational this afternoon, so I have to leave at 11:15 for an appointment with the tire guy. Will that affect quorum since Trustee Kelleher is not here?
It does not appear that it will affect quorum.
Okay,
So
I feel better.
You are clear to get your car fixed.
Okay, thank you.
Which is critical, I know, for
Tomorrow as well.
board
Yeah,
business for tomorrow.
exactly. I need it for both.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. So I just wanted to go over the ground rules. We are meeting today virtually pursuant to AB 361. As such, all votes will be roll call votes. If you are not speaking, please be on mute to cut background noise. For discussion items, each trustee will have a turn to speak in roll call order, more than once if desired. The public will also have an opportunity to speak on each item after trustees. The public will also have an opportunity to speak again at the end of the meeting on any other item not on the agenda that is within the subject jurisdiction of the board. I believe we do not have any time fixed items, so I hope to take a break at about the 10 o'clock hour. And there will be also a recess at 1 to 1:05 to accommodate the Civic Center TV broadcasting system. I'd like to ask board members to please stay on the Zoom meeting call after this regular meeting ends so that we can conduct the special meetings for each committee to address the AB 361 issues. And then I also have here, they added under 1.1C and 1.2C, a few names were added. I don't know if we need to have any special vote on that, but, or that will be included under waiving sunshine.
That would be under waiving sunshine.
Very good. So I think the first order of business then is to move into closed session on old business. And if the trustees will be patient, the staff will move us into the closed session. The next item is the orders of the day. I believe we announced the breaks. Do we have a motion to accept the orders of the day?
Mr. Chair, do you want to, were there additions to the agenda that need to be recognized, and then with a motion to waive sunshine on those items?
Okay. There are a few items that were added to the agenda and some attachments that were received late. They include attachments to items 4A, 4C 1 and 2, and 4D 1 and 2. And items were added to items 1.1C and 1.2C. Do we have a motion to accept the orders of the day?
Excuse me, Chair Horowitz.
Yes?
There's a change of date that should be read onto the record for one of the retirements. If you could do so, then we could vote on that one.
I see. And would that be item 1.1C?
I believe so.
So there is a change of date effective March 5th, 2022. And also for item 1.2C, Sylvia Roy changed the effective date from March 5th, 2022 to February 28th, 2022. I believe that's the change of date.
So we'll need a motion to waive sunshine on those items that you just specified that were added or had additional material posted since the posting of the agenda.
Yes, thank you. So do we have a motion to waive sunshine on those additions to the agenda as well as attachments that were received late?
So moved.
I'm sorry, that was Trustee Linder.
Yeah,
Yes.
Trustee Chandra seconds.
Trustee Chandra second. Any discussion? Any public comment? We'll have a roll call vote. Trustee Chandra,
Aye.
Trustee Orr,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings,
Aye.
Trustee Linder,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Item passes. That was
Then, if I
sunshine.
may, Mr. Chair, we'll need a motion to accept the orders of the day.
I'm sorry, say again, accept the orders of the day.
We'll need a motion to accept the orders of the day.
All right, do we have a motion then to accept the orders of the day with the changes noted?
A motion to accept the orders.
Moved by Vice Chair Jennings.
Second.
Second, that was
It was Linder.
Trustee Linder. Any discussion by trustees? Any public comment? Roll call vote. Trustee Chandra,
Aye.
Trustee Orr,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings,
Aye.
Trustee Linder,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. It passes unanimously. And then we move to the consent calendar. Do we have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
So moved.
Trustee Linder
And
Yes.
Trustee Chandra, I'll second.
and Trustee Chandra second. Any discussion by trustees? Any public comment? We'll have a roll call vote. Trustee Chandra,
Aye.
Trustee Orr,
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings,
Aye.
Trustee Linder,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Passes unanimously. Come to agenda item number 2, death and survivorship notification. We'll have a moment of silence for those who have served the city and who have passed. Thank you. Agenda item number 3, oral update from the CIO. Mr. Palani, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, trustees. Please, Mr. Chairman, allow me to express my condolences first to Trustee Jennings and her family. We will have a very brief update this morning. Next month, we'll have a more packed agenda on the investment side. And I'm actually going to invite Senior Investment Officer Jay Kwan to give the update. But before I do that, I do want to share some performance numbers. And as always, these are pro forma, and these are estimates, and these are unaudited. And these come from our consultant, Makita Investment Group. As of February 15th, the pension plan quarter to date was down 3.04%. As you know, it's been a rough few weeks in the markets, considerable headwinds that the market faces. But the good news is fiscal year to date, the pension plan is still positive. It's up 2.47%, owing to the strong performance in the first 6 months of last year. The healthcare trust quarter to date is down 2.93% through Feb 15th, and fiscal year to date down 34 basis points. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Jay Kwan.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kwan.
Good morning. We'll be brief here. So those of you who've been on the board for a while will recognize that we're approaching a significant and fundamental component of our investment process, and that's strategic asset allocation. So this is the time of year when Makita and Veris, along with many other investment institutions, are updating their capital market assumptions for all of the different asset classes utilized by the plan. So capital market assumptions, or CMAs, are just estimates of risk and return over the next 5, 10, or even 20 years. And the process that we go through this time of year is pretty well defined and laid out in the IPS, which you all just approved last meeting, so I'm sure it's fresh in your minds. As a reminder, in broad strokes, the process is to collect the updated CMAs, then use them to refresh the risk and return expectations for our current asset allocation, and then recommend any changes, first to the IC and then to the full board. So we're at the point in the process where we've received the updated CMAs and we're working with our consultants on possible mixes. Strategic asset allocation will be a primary topic at the next IC meeting on February 22nd. And hopefully there will be a recommendation coming out of that meeting for the full board's consideration at your March board meeting. So short and sweet, lots of work going on for the investment staff, for the consultants, hopefully lots to consider ahead for the IC and then the full board as well. I'll stop here for any questions, but that's what we're doing right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kwan. Any questions from trustees? Any question or comment from the public? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Mr. Polani, anything else from the investment staff?
Nothing at this time, Mr. Chairman. Just to remind the board, there will be a special in-person IC meeting tomorrow, followed by our regularly scheduled IC meeting next Tuesday. And I look forward to bringing back those SAA recommendations to the board next month.
Great, thank you. So we'll move forward to agenda item 4, old business. This is discussion and action on the Siegel presentation that we received, I believe, last month. And there is a presentation from, I believe, Chiron.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Let me
Good morning, Mr. Hallmark.
share my screen here. Okay, so last month, Siegel presented the results of their actuarial audit, and the board asked us to respond to their recommendations and some of the findings. And so we've outlined in this letter the response to each of their recommendations. We believe the two most important issues they identified are the cessation of contributions for Tier 1 members with 30 or more years of service and the Tier 2 pre-retirement death benefits. And so I'll take a few minutes to go through those, and then I'll hit the other recommendations at a pretty high level. For the 30 or more years of service, the City Council approved the final adoption of the ordinance on August 3rd, which technically is after our evaluation date, but the contribution rates become effective this July 1st. So we agree with Siegel that we should reflect this in the valuation. I think there was some confusion about the impact because Siegel reported the average member contribution rate compared to ours of 7.18 versus 7.41. But that difference is really based on the average member contribution rate. The contribution rates for members with less than 30 years of service, they matched very closely, and those would not change. Now, the one issue that, well, there are two issues to sort out. First, Siegel, and Siegel pointed this out in their audit. They used 30 years of service, including service with a reciprocal employer. And we believe the intent of the ordinance was to use 30 years of service with San Jose, because that's the point at which the benefit multiplier hits its maximum. And that was the idea behind the whole ordinance, was to stop contributions once a member hit their maximum multiplier. So if you apply that, and I think Siegel came close to our numbers, there's an 11 basis point difference. But then the other question is whether the contributions that would have been made by members with 30 or more years of service are to be reallocated to members with less than 30 years of service, or if they are picked up by the city. And in the discussions leading up to the ordinance, our understanding was that the city charter essentially required the reallocation. That's not something that we would necessarily advocate or anything, but that was our understanding. And so I think this is a question that we need to defer to legal counsel. But this table shows the net impact that we would have. Whether it's picked up by the city, then the average member contribution rate would be 7.3, but members with less than 30 years of service would actually be contributing 7.41. Or if it has to be reallocated, the member contribution rate would actually increase to 7.52 for those with less than 30 years of service, leaving the average member contribution rate at 7.41. So I know Plan Council's aware of this question, and I believe they're in the process of researching it to address it.
Yeah, that's right. So we are looking into this issue from a legal perspective, and we will be providing our opinion to the board at the next meeting.
And so I would say this is something that we can implement immediately. So we will, we normally come back in May with an actual resolution on contribution rates for the board to adopt. And we can reflect whatever Plan Council's recommendation is in the development of the contribution rates there. It doesn't change any of the fundamental underlying parts of the evaluation. It's just simply where does this piece of the contribution rate get allocated? And so we can reflect that in that contribution memo and have it effective July 1, 2022. So are there any questions on that one?
Any questions from trustees?
I just have one question, and it's in regards to what we already sent the city. That won't change any, will it change their assumptions, or are they still incorporating what we give them for next year? I mean, it is still early. We're just, end of February.
So the 5-year projections we sent to the city for their budgeting purpose did not allocate any of these member contributions to the city.
Mhm. But
So-
that's the
So that
5.
would be, it would be an effect of 11 basis points.
So about what's the dollar impact, more or less?
I don't have that in front of me.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't have to be exact. I mean, just like, is it minimal or is it significant? I guess is my point.
It's relatively small. I mean,
Okay.
the city's overall contribution rate is somewhere around 56% of payroll, as I recall.
Mhm.
And this is 0.11% of payroll.
Oh, okay. And I mean, even if it's not in their 5-year forecast, they still may, and I'm sure trustee Linder can attest to this, but they make changes to their salary calculations throughout this time. I don't think it will impact the longstanding budget for them, just from my knowledge. That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions from trustees? Any comment from the public? And please assist me, as I cannot see all the members who are online, if anyone's raising their hands. If there are any hands raised, please let me know. Okay, hearing none. So we are waiting both for comments from the board's attorneys as well as from the city attorney on how they interpret this particular item.
Well,
I think
go ahead.
I was going to defer to you, but I think we're just waiting for plan council.
That's correct. I'm not sure if we've tendered this over to the city's council to weigh in on. For the moment being, the discrepancy or the real differences in the legal interpretation between Siegel and Chiron only came to light once we saw this memo. So now we've got a little bit more to take a look at. If it is at the board's direction, we can certainly get the city attorney's office's opinion on this as well. But we are looking into this and preparing a memo from the plan's perspective.
Okay, great. Well, we'll look forward to that. Thank you, Council Chin. Thank you, Mr. Hallmark.
There's more.
There's more, yeah.
Oh, there's more. Okay.
So there's one more issue that has a similar resolution, which is the Tier 2 pre-retirement death benefits. And one of the advantages, I'd say, of doing an audit is you have actuaries approaching the plan provisions from different perspectives. And we developed our assumption of, or our understanding of the plan provisions by looking at the municipal code. In particular, these benefits changed with Measure F. And so we were working with the ordinance for that and trying to develop our programming. Siegel was able to come in and look at the summary of benefits that the Office of Retirement Services had put together and use that as their initial analysis of the plan provisions, and came to, and those describe different death benefits from each other. And so after those differences were identified, Siegel followed up with ORS to verify how they were administering the plan. And received assurance that they were administering it in accordance with the fact sheets they had published. I think actually these death benefits are rare enough that I don't believe we've had one yet. We tried to identify from our data, we found one person who potentially could have, but it turned out that they were not married, and so there was no difference in benefits. We've asked ORS to check their data and see, but we have not heard back yet on that. There are two key differences. One is who is eligible for a pre-retirement survivor annuity. This would be payable to the spouse. Our interpretation was based on this paragraph of the code saying that the member needs 5 years of service and does not say that that's restricted to tier 1. The fact sheet, though, relies on tier 2's eligibility being based on paragraph B, which clearly is just for tier 2. And so the difference is if you have someone who dies while working for the city and is age 50 with 20 years of service, our understanding was that that person, if they were married, their spouse would receive a survivor annuity. This interpretation is that that spouse would only receive the member's contributions with interest, and because they were not currently eligible to retire at the time of their death. So we need Plan Council to give us an interpretation of these statutes. The other key difference was that there's a section of the statute that says down here, this 3.281480D, that if the deceased person is a tier 2 member after essentially Measure F, that they shall receive the same death benefits as provided to other members of this plan. We interpret that because the tier 1 members receive a death benefit that's based on 2.5% of final average pay. We interpret that section to mean that the tier 2 member also gets 2.5%. We pointed out, I think back in 2017, that this was a little bit odd since the retirement benefit was only 2% of pay. And in fact, that's what is on the fact sheet, is that the tier 2 member would only get 2% of pay. So we need a clarification here. I think ORS had indicated they thought the municipal code needed to be corrected, but we need Plan Council to weigh in on that. I should say both of these issues could be very significant for individuals involved, but the events are rare enough that in terms of the valuation, we don't consider it to be a material change, but one that we would reflect in the next valuation once we have Plan Council's interpretation for these provisions.
Yes, and that's noted. We are also looking into this as well, and we'll provide the board our interpretation at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Because, you know, in the case that someone's working for the city, has the 20 years, retire and dies, are there people that would be impacted by that? If the interpretation is that they only get what the person, I guess a spouse, paid into the system, is that going to impact existing people that have, you know, that have found themselves in that situation? And would that be a retroactive? Would we have to go back and make those changes?
So I said, I don't think we've had anyone in that situation yet. Tier 2 is new enough.
No, tier 1, the first one, tier 1.
Oh, tier 1, the pre-retirement death benefits are only, the issue is only with tier 2. It's not.
No, I'm sorry, I'm going back to the one you said before, the one where
The The cessation of the contributions for tier one members with 30+ years of service. Is that what you're referring to, Trustee Jennings?
I thought it was just someone who was vested, who had 20, not 30 years. I thought what you were talking about before you went into tier two was the tier one. Was it, oh, see, for 5 years or more? Someone, it's A.
Oh,
That.
so there's no dispute over, there's no question about how the benefits work for tier one. That's not what it's issue. But the code section kind of mixes tier one and tier two descriptions together. And so
Oh, just that piece. Okay.
so the question was really, does this paragraph A only apply to tier one, or does it apply to tier one and tier two?
Okay.
Questions from any other trustees? Any questions from the public? So again, Council Chin, will we have a memo from you on this subject at the next meeting, or does that require more time?
Right now, we're looking into it. I can't guarantee that we'll be 100% provided by the next meeting, but certainly before we need to determine any contribution rates or anything like that. Our goal is to present on both our legal interpretation on the tier one and tier two issues presented in the Chiron response by the next meeting, but barring any unforeseen circumstances.
Okay, great.
I have more to go through, but those were the two I'm going to hit in detail. The remainder I'm going to go through at a very high level and then take questions. So we can move through these fairly quickly. Siegel made a few recommendations about the development of economic assumptions, one including being clearer about the price inflation assumption that's used when we develop the expected rate of return. We can beef up the disclosures on that. We did include that information in the price inflation section of our development of economic assumptions, but we didn't include it again in the expected return. I think what we would probably do is make sure that Makita's inflation assumption is included in the table in the appendix with their capital market assumptions, which it wasn't this year. Siegel takes a different approach with investment expenses that we disagree with. So we would not follow their recommendation here. Their approach would essentially reduce the expected return for any investment expenses. And largely that is due to the selection or the decision to use active management as opposed to passive management. And we take the view that we set the assumption based on a passive portfolio using Makita's capital market assumptions. And so we wouldn't reduce it or increase it based on a decision to use an active manager. Siegel's approach would automatically reduce the expected return if you select an active manager instead of a passive manager. And so we believe we should stay neutral on that. And the only reason that you hire an active manager is because you expect them to return at least as much as the fees that they are charging.
May I ask a question on that, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Good morning. Maybe this is more for Prabhu. Don't we benchmark our manager's performance to passive indexes that are net of fees, and don't we measure their performance against the benchmark net of fees, and then aggregate that to demonstrate what our performance, and compare that to our expected rate of return? Isn't that all done net of fees?
Harvey, I think I couldn't hear you towards the end, but yes, from what I heard, yes, we do benchmark our managers to passive indexes, and it is net of fees.
So we measure our managers' performance net of fees, and then we aggregate that for the performance of the entire portfolio net of fees. And then we measure the performance of the portfolio against our expected rate of return, also net of fees, I thought. And if that's the case, then shouldn't the actuarial assumptions be based upon net of fees performance and expected rate of return?
I think they effectively are.
Okay.
I'm
just very
so the difference is, Harvey, that let's just assume you had one asset class and you had an equity portfolio and you expected we looked at Makita's assumptions and they expected equities to return 8% on a passive basis. We would adopt an assumption of 8%. If the board elects to implement that equity portfolio with an active manager who charges 50 basis points, you would still measure them with their, in hindsight, the historical, based on their actual gross return net of that 50 basis points. All we are saying is that the expectation ahead of time is that that will still be 8%. Whereas Siegel would say, no, you're paying them 50 basis points, so now your expectation is only 7.5%.
Yeah, I think from Makita's perspective, we'd agree with what Bill is saying, that the expectations are their net of fees, but they don't include manager alpha, what the manager would add, but they also don't include the fees. So, assuming you're going to get sort of a medium return, of course, we hope we do better, but from a conservative standpoint, assuming you get a medium return, you probably don't want to subtract fees since you're also not including manager alpha.
Okay, if I may, Mr. Chairman, follow up a question on that. When our board, when you, Bill, when you present economic assumptions, and the economic assumption the board agrees on is that the assumed rate of return, the earnings rate on our assets, and also, by the way, the discount rate on our liabilities is 6.75%. And then at the end of the year, if we don't make 6.75% net of fees, isn't there an amount that's added to the unfunded liability, that delta?
Yes, when we are evaluating the investment return for the year and determining the investment gain or loss, that is net of the actual fees charged.
So we have a built-in unfunded liability if we assume our performance on a gross basis as opposed to a net basis, right?
We are assuming the performance on a net basis. The net basis is based on the passive portfolio. So you may make a decision to incur more fees than a passive portfolio, but the board does that with the expectation of earning a return greater than the passive portfolio. And so that the net is still equivalent to the passive portfolio.
Okay. If the board understands that, congratulations, I don't.
Sorry, I should laugh. Yes, I find it very confusing. You know what would be lovely? I don't know if that's ever something that could be done, but if there was like, you're talking about a fact sheet, on things, but if there was something that kind of, and I don't know if that's feasible, but like even some sort of flow chart, some sort of fact sheet that just makes it visual. It for us who are not in that world, it's very hard to follow. I do agree. I kind of, but that's me.
Well, I think the way to think about it perhaps is that the expected return on a passive basis is really the expected return net of fees. And we don't want to include any expectation of alpha where the active manager would earn more than the passive portfolio until they actually earn it. But we also don't want to punish you by reducing your rate of return because you make a decision to hire an active manager. The rate of return, we think, should be based on the asset allocation and what a passive portfolio invested in that asset allocation would earn.
And Mr. Hallmark, the Siegel approach, in contrast to that, do they assume a flat, I don't know, 50 basis points for the active management, or how do they add on the active management fee?
They look at what your actual expenses have been and subtract that from the expected return. I would note, however, when we've audited the Siegel Chicago office, they do it the way we do.
Yeah, you were saying that. I read that. It's the San Francisco office does it differently, which who knows? I guess you would, Siegel, Paul would need to talk to why they are the.
So let me say this though. There are several differences between what the Siegel San Francisco office does and what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up canceling each other out, and we audit each other all the time, and we complain about our process going through the investment return, and yet we get to about the same answer in just about every case. So
right,
we have our different approaches, and there are different pieces. So here we're just focused on one piece of it, and that and we disagree with the way Siegel approaches it on that piece. But you know, in aggregate, I think Siegel found our expected rate of return to be reasonable. So I don't think we should be too overly concerned about this technical approach.
Okay, thank you.
So the net effect is you're agreeing to disagree with Siegel's approach, and they have no material objection to that because the actual result is much the same.
Siegel would agree with that statement.
Okay. Any other
Thanks,
questions?
Paul. I wasn't going to speak.
Okay. Well, we're forcing a consensus somehow. Any further questions from trustees?
There are two.
Sorry. Sorry,
Yeah,
Bill.
go ahead, Trustee Orr.
No, I would just comment that I find that the memo is enough information. If need be, any other sort of supplemental, something more visual, if that would satisfy Trustee Jennings. But this seems, I think we may be belaboring the point somewhat. And I appreciate Ms. Werrick's additional comments. You know, if we're looking for an active manager, we're seeking outperformance. So, you know, she's the plus side and the negative, it all kind of goes off in the wash.
Yeah, I had no issue with the memo that Bill wrote. That all, I followed it. That part I was just talking about.
So there,
Harvey was bringing up. Yeah.
There are a couple of recommendations that I think really go to the board and some of their decisions, and so I would like to highlight those. One is the timing of selecting economic assumptions, and Siegel noted that we do it in October, and that creates a compressed calendar to get through the valuations and everything, and suggested that the board consider doing it earlier. We would absolutely defer to the board's preference on it. And you know, how much earlier you want to do it. It does affect the availability of some data, but the key data is the capital market assumptions, which I believe the 2022 assumptions are probably available now or would be very shortly. So we could certainly address this at an earlier time in the year if that's the board's preference. The only sort of drawback we've experienced with that approach is boards taking, because there's no compelling deadline to make a decision, the decision can get drawn out over several board meetings. But that does not have to be the case. And so we would just defer to the process the board wants to follow. The other one really is more from the retirement system. Siegel suggested that the system should request a copy of our final membership data file. And we did want to note, we do provide a copy of that annually to the auditors so that the auditors can verify the data used in the valuation. But I think what Siegel is suggesting is that the system conduct its own reconciliation between the valuation data and what's in their database. And so we're happy to provide the data, the final processed valuation data file to the system if they request it.
Yeah, may I jump in here? I do think it would be good practice to provide that to the system just so that we are able to catch any sort of reconciliation that needs to be taken into account for the following year and suss that out. That would be my recommendation to the board.
Okay. Any questions from trustees? Questions from the public? I don't know if there's trustee interest of taking up the idea of changing the timing of our economic assumptions. I don't know if investment staff would want to weigh in on that and advise us to change the timing of that, but that is something we can conceivably take up at a future trustee board meeting.
I guess my 2 cents is that I'm kind of indifferent. So basically we're getting the economic assumptions Q3 is what Chiron's currently doing, right? October?
Correct.
And so the other option is really getting it at the same time that we have the CMAs for asset allocation, or just picking a month in the summer that's quieter. And I think the goal, if I understand it, the intention might be is just to alleviate some of the compression and workload burden that kind of falls into that month of October. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
So we could pick any month that feels right, I think is what I'm hearing.
And it may make sense. You know, I know you're about to go into the asset allocation process. We would not want to do it before that process is complete, because we want to reflect whatever decision you make about changes in asset allocation.
And Mr. Chairman, I would agree with Bill that, you know, we can do it anytime after the asset allocation process is done.
Is there a preference, Raccoon, for your staff? Are you okay with just continuing it as it is? I mean,
Yes, we are, totally.
that works for you. Right?
And does it work for Chiron?
And does it work for Chiron? October, is that acceptable for both? I mean, we don't really have a big preference is what I'm hearing. So we're trying to understand the individual workload between Chiron and the investment staff and making sure that what you have, and is that still working?
So one of the other implications, which is common, is if you ask us what is the cost impact of a change, if we do it earlier, we will base that cost impact on the prior valuation. Whereas often now, if you ask for the cost impact, we have preliminary results from the current valuation. That should not be a major issue in terms of your decision on whether you're making a change or not. You just won't have precise information about the cost impact. But it would, I think it would help us spread the workload out. Your workload is very concentrated in the fall with financial statement data in September and October, and then the valuations following. So moving it earlier, there is some benefit to that, but we've been fine doing it in October.
Okay, so then, Prabhu, from your standpoint, from a staffing standpoint, is this working, or do you want to do it earlier?
I'm actually kind of indifferent, Trustee Jennings. I mean, I think our work is really focused. A lot of what we do in terms of asset allocation is now, and a lot of that work will be done by April, when we will actually implement any changes suggested by the board.
Okay. I just, my preference, since I also, I am an employee with the city and I do budget, I always like current data. When I budget, I try to get the most current because it just helps from that standpoint. So I like the idea of staying with something a little more current, especially with how things are so volatile and change. So I guess my preference is to keep it, but I don't have a strong preference either way.
Well, it certainly seems that there is no strong underlying sentiment to change our current timing, but it is certainly something we can take up in the future if we start to feel otherwise. The board also has a fairly busy schedule in August and September, what with evaluations and then with our usual September special meeting. So I believe the current timing is working for us. Any further questions from trustees on the entirety of Mr. Hallmark's presentation? Any further questions from the public? Well, I thank you, Mr. Hallmark, and thank you, Council Chin. I believe we'll move to the next agenda item. And that appears to be.
Well, if I may, we
Yes.
still have not approved the Siegel audit. We had deferred the action until we had heard from Chiron as his response. So we do need to take action on the Siegel presentation for the actuarial audit of the pension valuation report under item 4A.
All right, okay. So do we have any discussion of, well, is there a motion to accept the Siegel presentation on the pension valuation report?
I'll make a motion to Trustee Chandra to accept the report.
Motion to accept from Trustee Chandra. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second
This
from
is-
Trustee Linder. Any discussion from trustees on accepting the Siegel report?
I don't think I heard the report. I wasn't attending, I believe, so I'd like to abstain.
Okay. Any other trustee questions or public questions? Okay, we will have a vote to accept the Siegel report. Trustee Chandra,
Aye.
Trustee Orr,
Abstain.
Vice Chair Jennings,
Aye.
Trustee Linder,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Report is accepted. Okay, moving to item 5A, oral update from the CEO of Retirement Services, Mr. Pena.
Good morning. Thank you, Trustee Horowitz. Will be short this morning, my comments. Staff is working on the guaranteed purchasing power. That's the benefit that provides a 75% purchasing power from the day of retirement to members. And that actually will be paid out this month with the paycheck at the end of February. I updated you last month, but wanted to remind you that we had with the Omicron variant, we have paused our return to the office on a hybrid approach. And so we are now considering resuming our plan at the March 14th date, which is about 3 weeks from today, where we, assuming everything continue as it is currently going, we expect to have staff coming to the office at least 2 days a week and see how that works for us. But suffice to say that even in the meantime, we have had some staff at the office, and we're still open for appointments and drop off, whether they are in person or they are virtual in any case. I wanted to let you know that we are going to be providing, or actually having second interviews for our network technician position. That will be next week. And we're hoping to actually initiate the interview process for a IT department manager. Ideally later this month, if not early in the March. We have a couple of positions that closed yesterday, staff specialist. Also want to remind everyone that the cost of living for Federated employees will be paid with the April retirement benefits paycheck. I also wanted to welcome to the office 2 new members, Greta Calderon, the benefits specialist, and Eric Sang, investment officer. We are working on the budget. The goal is to present our request for the fiscal year 22-23 budget next month. I initiated my discussions with our contact person at the mayor's office, and of our request for the coming year, and we expect resolution shortly. That actually concludes my comments, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pena. Any questions from trustees?
Oh, I'm sorry. Before I forget, Linda will be mad at me. She wanted me to remind everyone, as we are sort of coming out of this pandemic. I know that we have not been traveling for a couple of years, but when we start kicking off traveling again, to please reach out to administrative staff for any kind of plans on attending conferences, any kind of, if you need a travel plan to purchase tickets or hotel stays, make sure that you run that early through the administrative staff so that we can make the necessary arrangements for you. So I think that's what Linda wanted me to say. We did issue the newsletter and it went out to the members late last month. They should have received them by now. Linda, did I get that right? Is there anything else that I should mention regarding that reminder?
Perfect, Roberto. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, perfect. You can't get better than that. Any questions from trustees for Mr. Pena?
Just one question, Mr. Chair.
please.
How are staff feeling about the returning on March 14th or thereabouts?
I think, we have staff. First of all, let me invite Barbara to comment on it as well, our deputy director. But I think in general, we have staff that are sort of in the whole spectrum. I think some staff kind of looks forward to getting back to the office a couple of days a week. And I think we do have some staff that, wouldn't mind continue working remotely. I mean, certainly over the last 2 years, staff have actually shown that we can get our core duties completed. So again, I think to answer your question, really we have staff, I think, in the whole spectrum. But I think that generally speaking, they understand that we need to start initiating a process where we start opening the office and start welcoming members and staff. And I think that I have made it very clear that we certainly are going to, as much as possible, to implement a hybrid approach for staff going forward. So it remains to be seen how that hybrid will end up being implemented, but we certainly will do that going forward. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't know if you want to add any comments.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Roberto, it's also my understanding that as the Director of Retirement Services, it is your ability to allow for members to work remotely if they want to. The city manager has provided that leeway, and there are forms available. So based on level of service and how you operate your office, that is available for employees.
Yes, it is available, and we will certainly work with members of the office, of the staff and personnel to, again, provide a hybrid approach and the ability to work remotely. Yes, we will certainly consider that. Or
even 100% remotely.
Yes, that's certainly an option. I think in some instances, 100% is a tough requirement. But we do have different sections in the office. There are some divisions that are, I think, having a person work from home, 100% of the time or close to 100%. May be more viable than in other areas. So, but certainly we will consider that as well.
And I would say, again, this is your administrative option to do. I would say that I support that. So if that is feasible and works with your staff and the work that needs to get done, as a trustee and vice chair, I stand behind that.
That's good to hear. Thank you, Trustee Jennings. I know you haven't asked this question, but again, we are fully supportive of working remotely. Maybe because of my long tenure in employment since the 1980s and maybe my age, I'm fully supporting working remotely, but I also am mindful of working culture. And so we're going to have to see how the hybrid approach works, because I think it's a little more challenging when you have a number of staff working remotely and the number of staff working at the office. So it's a little more challenging to combine those two. So I think what I have left with my staff is a couple of things. Number one, we will certainly take in consideration their requests. And we are fully supportive of working remotely. But at the end of the day, it has to be an agreement that works for both, right? That it works for the staff, but it also works for the office. But having said that, and the second one is that we will always, any kind of decisions that we make, like for example, this March 14th deadline, we have promised that we will always give them at the very least 2 weeks heads up. It's been more than a month, and we already let them know. So we also want to make sure that we work with staff to give them plenty of time to make arrangements before we initiate the process. So.
And technology. You need to have the technology. Yeah.
We actually, a good point. In fact, through the pandemic, I think, Barbara, if I'm mistaken, correct me, at least 90% or more of the staff already have laptops. So, I mean, I know technology is just more than that, but that's one key component that have allowed staff to work also remotely. Now, when we start going back to the office, that means that, you know, they bring the laptop back to the office and then they take it back home when they go back home. Yes.
Docking stations, headphones, all that, you know, yeah. Anyhow, yes, as a city employee, I mean, I'm just working that with my own staff and working within my own department. And I have to say that Parks and Rec has been great. John Cicerelli is very supportive, and I think he's doing a great job. So that's all.
Any further trustee questions? Or public comments? All right, thank you, Mr. Pena, and good luck with the transition to hybrid. I'm sure it'll be an interesting experiment. Moving forward to item B, oral update from City Council Liaison. I believe I saw Councilwoman Davis online.
Good morning. I'm afraid I don't have much of an update today. We are in the time period where we are awaiting the projections, the 5-year projections for the budget and the mayor's March budget message. So nothing to report today.
Okay, thank you. Despite that, if any trustees have questions or public comment? Very good. Thank you, Councilwoman Davis. Moving forward to item number C, discussion and action on Siegel's presentation on the audit for OPEB valuation. And I believe someone from Siegel has a presentation for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Paul Angelo. I'm a pension guy, so I'm going to just make a brief introduction and then hand this over to Andy Young and his partner, Sam Sang. So Andy, it's all yours.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Paul. With that, I will ask for permission to share my screen if I can. So I'll pull up, just want to make sure that you can see a copy of my valuation report.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. As Paul has indicated, my name is Andy Young. I am joined by our partner, Sam Bostani, who is our health actuary. With this particular valuation, it's very similar in concept to what we have done last month for the pension valuation. So in particular, we have been tasked with doing a totally independent audit of the OPEB plan. So by that, I mean, we actually collect data separately from the retirement office. Then we turn around and ask Bill Hallmark Chiron to provide us with a copy of the clean data that they have used in the OPEB valuation. So we compare and note a couple of very minor differences, unlike what we have observed for the pension plan. Then what we do is exactly the same process that we've gone through. We try to make sure that the plan provisions that are incorporated in the Chiron valuation for the OPEB plan is exactly the same as what is appearing on the retirement systems website. And I'm very pleased to report that they are identical. So, and we also take that one step further to make sure that the provisions that Chiron have included in the valuation for the OPEB plans are exactly the same as what is included in the retirement website. And again, we're very pleased to report that all the assumptions lined up on the plan provisions line up perfectly. Even though we have not been tasked to review any of the other actuarial assumptions, such as the non-economic assumptions, by that we mean when for example, some of the active employees expected to retire from the plan and collect a benefit, pension health care benefit, but we nonetheless look at some of the very high level important assumptions that Chiron has assumed for the healthcare plan. And later on, during the later part of the presentation, I'm going to ask our health actuary to report that observation with you, but very pleased to report that the healthcare assumptions are very much in line with what we would have done if we have the city as our ongoing client. We have looked at the actuarial assumptions that are used by Chiron. We looked at, in this particular case, unlike the pension valuation, because the portfolio that is used in the valuation is somewhat different, more conservative. So as a result, the economic assumptions are slightly lower at 6% as opposed to 6.625. But nonetheless, we are very pleased to report that we find the 6% assumptions to be very reasonable. Now, I've already talked about the data, so I won't go through that again. Now, the one thing that I apologize, I skip over again, which is really the reason why you want to do an audit, is to get the answer, right? So what is the outcome, knowing that we have already looked at the data, we have looked at the assumptions, we have looked at the plan provisions. Again, we're very pleased to report that our audit confirms the result of the actuarial valuations. However, that is after some adjustments have been made by Chiron following the discussion with Segal. And again, I'm going to later on turn over to my partner, Sam, to go through some of the adjustments that we have made. Now, I also noticed that Chiron has prepared a separate presentation talking about some of those same changes that they have made as a result of the discussion with Segal. So I just want to park that thought with you. But nonetheless, after reflecting those adjustments to the liabilities, Segal results are getting actually very close to those results that are provided by Chiron. So with that, I will just move back to the original presentation. Now, insofar as the methodologies that is used in the OPEB valuation, we note that in this particular valuation for the retiree health plan, Chiron has used the market value of assets, and they have also used a slightly different amortization methodology insofar as if the actuarial assumptions were not to come true, if unfunded liabilities were to surface, how would those unfunded liability will actually pay off in the next several years? I know that this is a comment that was raised by one of the board members when Paul and I were presenting the funding valuation report. Coincidentally, Bill was presenting the OPEB report at the last meeting. So we think that it would be a good idea, at least for the trustees, to get themselves refamiliarized as to why a different asset smoothing methodology or why a different smoothing or UAL amortization policy is put into place for the OPEB plan, which is different from the retirement plan. So again, something that the trustees may find interesting to take a look at, to refresh your memory as to why you choose to have two different methodologies to begin with in the first place. So along the lines of the very close match that we have on the valuation results after the adjustments, we have now included a table to actually show you how close those results really are. So we have two columns of results from the Chiron. One would be the results that you have seen when they presented the OPEB valuation report to you last month. So bottom line is, if we sum up the value of all the liabilities, we refer to that as the present day value. So meaning that if the trust were to have about $696 million on hand today, as of June 30, 2021, that would be enough to pay down all the liabilities as of that date. After the adjustments that, again, Sam will be talking about, the liabilities have gone up by about somewhere close to $20 million to $713 million. So if we look at the liabilities after they have been adjusted, and then you can see that the results are actually pretty close to what Segal has calculated. Now, there are some reasons why our liabilities are never going to be exactly the same as what Chiron has calculated for the OPEB plan, because we make the same observation when we were presenting the audit findings for the pension plan. But to add to that one more item, which has to do with the fact that when we do the valuation, our program is typically set up to do a beginning of year valuation. So in order to do the type of valuation that Chiron has prepared, which is a middle of year timing, we have to do some approximation. So the bottom line is, even though we're not at exactly the $713 million that Chiron has calculated after they have made the adjustments, we don't have any concern, because we would typically think that the numbers would not be exactly the same anyway because of the way we apply the actuarial assumptions. But in this case, for a health plan, the timing of when our members, active members in particular, are expected to retire from the plan and start collecting a health benefit is going to play a role. And so that's one of the reasons why we don't expect the numbers to be right on anyway.
May I ask one quick question, and you may have touched on this, Mr. Young, which is that when you say before adjustment and after adjustment, can you explain that difference for us, please?
Yeah. So maybe Council Chin, with that, I'll just turn it over to Sam. Sam, will you please kind of walk us through I know that we have that in the report as well, but will you just kind of take us through some of the adjustments that we have made as a result of our conversation with Chiron?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
So, Andy, if you can you please go to page 7? This is where we summarize the items that we revised. See, under observation, item number 2, we did summarize the revision that we had to go and discuss with Chiron and make those changes here. So there's 3 items. Number 1 is this is in relation to the catastrophic disability for VIBA, Wapton, for active Wapton VIBA. What happened is we believe Chiron was overstating the liability here because it was using a blended premium based on coverage tier instead of using a maximum subsidy amount capped at a single coverage. So the prior numbers were overstating the liability here. The second change is on the terminate investment. Chiron was applying an additional 60% adjustment to the liability to the enrollment. So it was understating this liability here for the terminate investing. The third item, which is the last item here, is on the future female future retiree. The subsidy used was the male subsidy, which happened to be higher and needed to be adjusted down. So it was overstating the liability. So what happened after the adjustment here, the net liability increased. And as Andy mentioned, I think we had like a 10 million increase in liability from before adjustment to after adjustment. So these are the adjustments that we discussed with Chiron, and Andy kind of mentioned the impact on the liability.
Now that's the
Okay, so items, I just want to make sure I understand this. So items 2A, 2B, and 2C are the areas that were taken into consideration for what is considered the adjustment shown in the table that Mr. Young showed us earlier.
Right. And I do believe Chiron will discuss this with the board. And I think Chiron has a presentation now talking about this and whether there would be a need to update the results for the 2021 evaluation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think in addition to what I've shown earlier on, the table at the top, which talks about the change in the present value of benefits before and after the adjustments, we have also provided on page 4 of the report, which I'm now going to show in the middle of page 4, what would be the impact on the actuarially determined contribution. So this would be the bill, for example, that you would be sending over to the city for payment for the upcoming fiscal year. Because what we noticed was that on the report that the board has reviewed last month, the contribution requirement for fiscal year end 2023 would have been $18.3 million prior to the adjustments. At the time when we prepare our valuation report or this other report, we did not have the, for example, the PowerPoint that Bill is going to be talking to the board today, but we estimate that that there would be an increase in the actuarially determined contribution or the ADC by about $500,000, and I think our estimate was actually looking out pretty good because I was looking at the material that Chiron is going to be preparing next, presenting next in our independent audit, because like I said, our present value of benefit is somewhat different. It's slightly lower than what Chiron has prepared. So if we were to apply our methodology and our results that we've calculated totally independent of Chiron, we would have come up with a actuarial ADC of 18.5 million for that same fiscal year. So certainly we would expect our numbers to not be exactly the same as what Chiron, and the proof is that the numbers are turning out pretty close. We have 18.5 million, and when we compare that to the numbers that they have adjusted after the adjustment was $18.8 million. Again, I compare that to the number that they produced before, which was $18.3 million. Okay. Okay, so then I think in the rest of this detailed findings section, I can talk a little bit more about the reasons why we think that it would be a good idea for the board to possibly consider, at least get acquainted, familiarized again as to why you have two different methodologies that are set into place to determine the asset value, which is used in the pension valuation, which is based on the so-called 5-year asset smoothing method, versus the method that is used in the OPEB valuation, which is based on market value. And then in addition to that, for the pension valuation, the methodology is such that anytime you have an unfunded change in the unfunded liability, depends on whether or not it's an assumption change or is based on a typical change in actuarial experience, then you have different types of amortization periods that are put into place to deal with those increase or, for that matter, decrease in the unfunded liability. But for the OPEB valuation, it is done using market value of assets, which I've talked about, and also all the changes in the unfunded liability without regard to whether or not it's an assumption change or if it is an actuarial experience item, is amortized over a period of 20 years, and then with a 3-year phase-in and phasing of the contribution rate increase. Now, I know, Paul, you and I talked about that, and we put the comment in the report. Are there any thing that I might have missed, Paul, that we might at least suggest to the board as one of the reasons why they may want to consider kind of at least getting a better understanding as to the difference between the method that we would, for example, have recommended for a client, which would be very similar to the one used for the pension plan versus the OPEB. Anything that I might have missed that you might want to add, Paul?
Yeah, I'll just throw in, we had a very productive chat with an exchange of emails with Bill Hallmark on this. And I think this will be one where Bill is going to recommend that Chiron continue with their approach. But there is a fact question. You have two sources of volatility in a pension plan. You have investments and you got the demographics. And in a pension plan, the investments are much, much more volatile than any of your other elements of plan experience. And so that's why most funds don't just run their costs based on raw market value experience. It'd be too volatile. And so what the model practice for pensions is, and which is what you use for your pension plan, is to have a separate volatility management tool called asset smoothing. And that gets your asset volatility down, still volatile even after smoothing your returns, but then you can combine them with your liability volatilities and have a number that is manageable in terms of your amortization. What Chiron has identified, our discussions with Bill, is that they believe that for the OPEB plan, your liabilities are also more than typically volatile. And we're not sure we have necessarily an agreement on the facts on that. That is, but if that's true, well, then you'd have to have something like an asset smoothing to do for the liabilities. And that is in fact what Chiron does with your amortization method, which is a non-level amortization. I believe it's a 3-year ramp up. So it's sort of like you're doing 3-year volatility smoothing on the liability side. Well, if you do asset smoothing separately, and then in the liability in the unfunded liability, you also did smoothing there, well, then you would be in effect double smoothing the asset volatility. And I think that is, I can't really speak directly for Bill, but in our discussion, that's why they prefer to use to basically have only one smoothing mechanism, which has to be done in the unfunded liability calculation. So that's a little bit in the weeds, but it really turns on whether the liability side volatility is so great that it needs its own volatility management. And I think that's a question of fact, certainly not the true on the pension plan. And I know that, Andy, for our OPEB plans, I don't think that we have had that result. So we actually use the same funding policies for OPEB plans that we use for pensions. So that's just an elaboration on what Andy is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think while comment from Bill is well taken, that at least right now it seems like the liability volatility is much bigger than the volatility on the assets. But we make the observation though that right now, if we look at the amount of assets in the plan relative to liability, it certainly has grown over time, right? Because since the last audit, when we were looking at comparing the assets liability, it was only 30%. So through the effort of the city and the board, you have been able to raise the amount of assets to 59%. And the plan, of course, is to raise it even further as the UALs are paid off so that this will approach 100%. So imagine that when that day comes, you have 100% of the assets, So I think, as we all know, that it's not unusual to have a huge swing in the market value of assets returned from one valuation to the next. So whereas maybe the liability volatility is a lot bigger today, but one day would come when the volatility on the assets will be as great. So I think this goes back to the point that Paul was making earlier.
Yeah, and the only last comment I would make is because smoothing of asset volatility is so prevalent in the industry, and it raises some questions. We like to be able to tell what would the cost be if we did not manage that asset volatility. And you can do that when you have asset smoothing as a separate tool. We can show very clearly, here's the history of the market assets, here's the smoothed assets. You can see how they behave. We even show the cost under both bases. Whereas when you build your smoothing into the amortization method, it's very difficult to extract that. So we use the term transparency. We think it's easier to see the effect of volatility management when you use an explicit asset smoothing. But I want to make clear, what we're really recommending to the board is that this might be a learning opportunity for you to talk to your actuary and just sort of review why these are different. And that also allow you to get a current assessment of whether the differences between the OPEB plan and the pension plan continue to justify this different treatment.
May I jump in and ask a question, please?
Please go ahead.
So one of the things I wanted, I understand that from what the comments are being made here, that whether or not they decide which methodology to use is somewhat contingent on the factual circumstances, the liabilities volatility, the assets volatility for the valuation. One question I do have is, given your experience in the field, what is the more common methodology used for other OPEB plans that you have seen?
Andy, I'll let you check me on this. It's hard to say, Council Chin, it's hard to say what's common with pre-funded OPEB plans because there aren't that many. Retirement plans are routinely pre-funded, but not all OPEB plans are. So I don't have a whole lot of data to draw on, but I would hazard a guess that most pre-funded OPEB plans use the pension model rather than the implicit smoothing built into the amortization. I don't have a lot of data to back that.
And the implicit smoothing amortization is the methodology that Chiron is using. Is that correct?
For OPEB, yes.
For OPEB, yes. Okay.
To be fair, it is not unheard of. Actually, CalPERS uses this non-level amortization approach, a slightly different version of it. They use that, and again, for the reason that they just don't want to have to talk about two different asset numbers. Whereas we actually find that having the two different asset numbers can be a productive conversation in terms of understanding where you are in your volatility management. But again, part of CalPERS problem is, someone reading an actuarial report, in some small agency town in Southern California doesn't have an actuary in the room, and they see two asset numbers and they go, "What the heck's going on?" So there's maybe a justification for a large system like CalPERS that may or may not apply in a system here where you really have a much closer working relationship with your actuary.
Okay, that was really helpful. Thank you.
And I think one other comment that we want to make, even though Councilor Chin has not asked the question yet, is we find the method recommended by Chiron that they use in evaluation to be reasonable. So we don't want to leave the impression that, oh, because it's different, there's something wrong. No, the method is reasonable. So I think with that, as promised, I said that we will have Sam maybe go through a little bit of the review that we have done on the retiree healthcare assumptions. So Sam, would you like to take a minute to kind of walk us through what our findings are?
Yeah, sure. It's gonna be high level here. So we looked at the methodology to develop the healthcare assumption. Number one is the claim cost assumption here. This is for the insured plan, blending combined federated police and fire, load for child cost, age adjusting. So all the stuff seemed to us being in accordance with the actual standard of practice. So we do believe that the healthcare methodology assumption are reasonable. We also looked at the healthcare trend assumption. This is basically indexing the claim cost over time. So this assumption, what we have, what Chiron has is starting with a higher short-term trend assumption and the grading down to a long-term assumption, which typically happen to be lower, kind of capture the long-term healthcare inflation. And overall, we believe it is also reasonable. The initial trend rate that Chiron uses 8% for pre-Medicare, 4% for Medicare. The ultimate trend on the medical is at 3.78%. I know it is reasonable overall, but we do. I just want to kind of note that the 3.78% ultimate appear to be out of step to what I have seen on for many clients and many consulting firm doing. So what we typically see is within the range of 4 to 4.5%. This seems to be below that. Again, no concern here. Overall, it's reasonable. I just wanted to note this. So assumptions in healthcare are reasonable, generally speaking.
Yeah, and I think last but not least, we have also included a page with some of the opportunities where we find Chiron can consider when they complete next year's valuation report to provide some other additional disclosure. Again, we won't go through this bullet point by bullet point, but we have talked to Chiron about some of those, and so something that they can possibly consider for the next valuation. And then I think we, very similar to the pension report, have provided a couple of line items. I know it's kind of small for the trustees to see, but I think I will summarize those for you. So basically, there's an update to the valuation results as a result of the audit that we've conducted. Chiron has already provided what those results are that we have summarized for the board before and after the adjustments. I think we've talked about the Chiron possibly talking to the board about the pros and cons of applying the OPEB valuation, the same asset smoothing and the amortization policy as currently in place for the pension plan. And then last but not least, there are just some disclosure items that they can possibly consider for the next valuation. So I think with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes our prepared remarks.
Great, thank you for that very comprehensive review. Trustees, any questions? Any public comment? I think before we proceed with the presentation for attachment 5C sub 2, let us take our 10 o'clock hour break. I have 10:13, so we'll reconvene at 10:18 and hear the rest of the presentation. Presentation under 5C is 5C attachment number 2. And who will be presenting on that?
I will. Again, let me. Okay. So we will respond to all of Siegel's recommendations, I presume, for the next board meeting, but their first recommendation we wanted to address today. And that's a discussion about whether we should revise the 2021 valuation to correct for these 3 issues that Sam talked about. These are the same issues. We put them in the order that they were discovered. There's the issue of overvaluing the catastrophic disability benefits. And then we also realized that for female actives, we had overstated the maximum explicit subsidy. And then for vested terminated members, we were applying a participation assumption in addition to the in lieu assumption instead of just using the in lieu assumption, which was as we had intended to just use the in lieu assumption. Here's a quick summary of the impact. I think Siegel's already shown you the impact on the liabilities. It would reduce the funded percentage from 66 to 65%. Obviously has no impact on the assets. And the contributions, Siegel's already showed you, but it would increase the city's contribution from 18.3 million to 18.8 million, has no effect on any of the other contribution amounts. So This really is a decision for the board. The differences here are within kind of a normal range for an actuarial audit, but they are noticeable differences. So the board could implement the changes starting with 2022, although we know we would implement them for the GASB valuations that are based on a 2021 valuation rolled forward. Or we can revise the 2021 funding valuation and implement those changes immediately. We've provided rationales for both approaches. The rationale for just implementing with 2022 is that the changes overall are not that material. The contributions would be $500,000 short of what we expect. That's substantially less than our average annual liability gain or loss over the last 5 years. So any difference would be picked up in the next valuation. The potential advantage of delaying is to not disrupt the city budget process, since we've already communicated the 18.3 and that's part of their budget process. The rationale for making the change now is that we know what those changes are, and there is time, although it's in the city's budget process, it's still early. We have not fixed the contributions for 2023 yet. They're not locked in, and so there is the time to make those changes now. And the revised valuation would reflect accurately the assumptions adopted by the board and disclosed in the valuation report. So with that, we would take questions. If you do want the 2021 valuation revised, we would be back next month with the revised report for the board to adopt.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Questions then from the trustees?
Well, I guess we need to decide if,
Yep.
I guess, what is expedient, also what is necessary. I mean, we are aware of it. It looks like it's about a 500,000 more or less impact to the city, right? I think I had that right.
Yes.
Nope.
And
You want to go back? Yeah, thank you.
yeah. And thereabout. But again, this is on the OPEC, so this is the tier 1 benefit payment piece, right? I mean, this is what we're talking about. And this is a locked in amount, it's locked in with a set amount, eventually expires. So, I mean, I don't know if the exposure is that significant, as you state, and there is some benefit to incorporating the changes for the future. I'm as a city employee, as a trustee, as someone responsible on a fiduciary level, I kind of teeter. I would be interested in some of the other trustees and hearing what they have to say, because I think we have to make a decision, right?
We definitely have to make a decision. Are there questions and/or comments from other trustees on how we should proceed? Either to essentially defer this change until the next round or to implement immediately?
I'm wondering if I could do kind of a combination. This is Trustee Linder to keep it as it is, but let them know that a change is coming.
Well, I think that would be a change is coming is clearly implied by what was presented. So that,
yes,
that would be clear.
I mean, I think It's important for them to know that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Um,
And Councilmember Davis is here as well.
Yeah,
So she kind of represents the city.
but I also understand how it works inside
I know, yeah, I
the
know.
budget process.
Right, so the budget director should be informed.
That's my point.
Right.
That if we don't do the change now,
Mhm.
we do owe it to them that it's going to change.
Right.
And at what amount.
And I would just say, we have let the city finance people know.
Oh, good. Okay.
So they're waiting the decision to see if it affects this year's budget or just the future.
So Trustee Linder, would you like to formulate a?
Well, wait a minute. Councilmember Davis has her hand up.
Yeah, I think let's see what she has to say.
Could I just weigh in real quick?
Yes.
Please.
So at the city, I think I can say with some confidence that Jim Shannon would rather rip the Band-Aid off sooner rather than later. He's doing the 5-year projections now. And while a $500,000 difference is not ginormous, I think, and I think it could be absorbed in his 5-year projections. I would suggest action earlier rather than later would be better.
Well, okay.
We'd rather know. We'd rather know and take it into account than not know and then have to double up next year.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis. Mr. Chair, can I comment from staff standpoint?
Please.
In essence, just echo Councilmember Davis' comments. I think at the end of the day, you board already know of this change and it's early enough in the budget process. From a staff standpoint, I would recommend to the board to seriously consider making the change now rather than leaving it for next year.
Okay. I do think, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to, I think if Mr. Shannon is still in the midst of his 5-year projection, then I would be ready to make a motion to rip off the Band-Aid now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we can make that motion, we do need to have Chiron prepare those numbers and come back at the next meeting to vote on those adjustments. I think for here today, the item agenda is for a discussion and action on the approval of Siegel's presentation of its actuarial audit findings. So the motion would be limited to accepting Siegel's audit findings and recommendations, and then we would further direct Mr. Hallmark to come back at the next meeting to present.
Thank you for that.
Can we have a combined motion for those two concepts?
There's only one concept that we need to do. We could always direct Mr. Chiron to Mr. Chiron. I'm sorry, Bill. Direct Bill to come back in the next meeting, taking into consideration that we're going to be adopting these adjustments.
All right, so let's take it separately then. Is there a motion? Do I hear to accept the actuarial audit from Siegel?
So moved.
OPEB valuation.
I second it.
So that was a motion by Trustee Linder, seconded by Vice Chair Jennings. Any discussion of that motion? Any public comment? So we'll have a roll call vote. Trustee Chandra?
Aye.
Trustee Orr?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings?
Aye.
Trustee Linder?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so that passes. And do we hear a motion then to direct Mr. Hallmark and Chiron to prepare the numbers for immediate implementation of this change at the next scheduled trustee meeting?
May I interject? There's no motion that needs to be made. We can simply direct
him?
Mr. Hallmark to prepare those.
Okay.
Yes, so we will come back next meeting with a brief response to the other recommendations and a revised valuation report.
Okay, very good then. So you are directed, and it looks like we're moving forward with ripping the Band-Aid, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any further comment on item 5C? Any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move forward to item 5D. Discussion and action on an amendment of the MOU between the board and the city for use of actuary to review the city bond disclosure documents.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just for the record, Siegel's going to leave the meeting. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Siegel.
Thank you, Paul. Mr. Chair, so this item actually is to be presented by Finance Director Julia Cooper. I believe, Julia, you are in the meeting. Is that correct? Yes, she is. I just wanted to introduce the item. Obviously, this is a request by the Finance Department of work that Chiron does for the public documents for bond issuances over time. And so the contract, I think, is coming to, and so they would like to renew it. And that's why Bill is also here in case you have any questions for Bill. So with that, I'll turn it over to Julia. Julia, good morning. Welcome.
Thank you. And we do want to appreciate all the assistance that both the retirement staff provides and Bill as well in preparing our bond disclosure documents. So we've had this MOU in place for several years and it reached its kind of expiration date. So we've included a brief memo and then a red line to the MOU to the new one that we're proposing that would be approved by both the Federated Board and then the Police and Fire Retirement Board in a couple of weeks. And this just allows Mr. Hallmark to review the documents that's prepared by our disclosure council to make sure that we have correctly interpreted all of the actuarial reports and the financial reports, and so that we can have, accurate disclosure to the municipal market. We're currently working on the project we're currently working on is a refunding of bonds that were issued for our convention center. And there's obviously hotel tax revenues are down, so we want to get those savings in place as quick as possible. So that's what the MOU is, and it will just allow us to continue to work with Chiron and Mr. Hallmark going forward as we have other bond issues that come up over the next couple of years.
Okay. So do we have a presentation then, or are you?
No presentation. It's
Okay.
the staff report and the red line document is in your packet. So I'm just available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
I
Go
just
ahead.
have one question, Julia. I'm just trying to understand this a little. Is this because Retirement Services has the contract and this allows finance to utilize that contract?
No, we actually enter into a separate agreement with Chiron to use their services, and we pay for that separately. So there's no cost whatsoever to either one of the plans. It's all paid for separately by the city and under a separate agreement with Chiron.
So why do you need to come to us for this? I just don't get that.
It's been an agreement that we've worked out with Harvey several years ago because the Chiron is a consultant of the boards. So we want to make sure that the boards are aware that we're actually contracting with them and that there's no conflict. So I don't know, Mr. Lieberman, if you want to add to that.
Sure, that is the key issue that establish that there's no conflict in Chiron performing services for both the plan sponsor and the plan themselves. And then further, if we're going to accommodate that, and as long as Chiron is willing, I see no reason why the board shouldn't be willing to do that. But as well, we protect the boards by making it very clear in the MOU that there's no representation that we, this board, has reviewed any bond issuance or expresses any view relating to the bond issuance. And so that disclaimer is in there so that there's no representation to the bond holding market of any involvement in the bond issuance by the plan.
Oh, I see. Kind of like
to assist the city in being able to do this, much of the disclosures the city has to make relates to their liabilities to the retirement plans. And so it's natural to have the actuary for the retirement plan who's in the best position to make those, to verify that data, make that available to the city. It's efficient, and as long as we protect the plans, we recommend it to the board, and we will recommend it to the police and fire board as well.
I see. Thank you. I appreciate it. Just helps me. I do kind of know the procurement process a bit, so it's just like a little confused.
So, Mr. Liederman, you were fading out just a little bit on the connection. So just to recap, you do recommend approving this, and you see no conflict of interest in our using the same actuary as the city in this case.
I'm very comfortable with the MOU, and we do recommend it.
Thank you. And Mr. Hallmark, do you have any comment that you would like to add?
No, I think it's been covered here. Our work is just primarily making sure that the work we present to the board is represented accurately in those documents.
Great. So any further questions from trustees? Any comment from the public? So we do need a motion and to accept the MOU between the city and Chiron, or to approve, or?
Let's have staff pull up the agenda item just so we see the exact action that's being requested here.
Mhm.
Thank you. It is item 5C. Here we go.
5D.
I'm 5D, I'm sorry. Discussion and action on the amendment to the MOU.
I do want to say on behalf of staff, we use the word amendment sort of intended. I mean, we use it when we also could use extension. I'm not really sure what the city is looking for, whether it's an extension or an amendment. Of course, if you extend the contract, you amend the contract, right, to extend the contract date. But in any case, all we're looking for is for your board's approval for the city to do have that contract directly with Chiron.
Yeah, the document is an amended and restated MOU. It is attached as an agenda backup, and so the motion would be to authorize execution of the amended and restated MOU. That's
which is just you were extending the dates, right? You know, the term, basically.
It would be the approval of attachment 5D2.
Yeah.
Well, let's keep it simple then. Do I hear a motion to approve attachment 5D2?
I so put forward that motion.
So
This is trustee Chandra. I'll second it.
So that is, we have a motion from Vice Chair Jennings, a second from trustee Chandra. Is there any discussion from trustees? Any public comment? Hearing none, we will have a roll call vote. Trustee Chandra?
Aye.
Trustee Orr?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings?
Aye.
Trustee Linder?
Aye.
And I vote aye. It passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving forward to item 5E, discussion and action on adoption of resolution 9101, cost of living adjustment for 415B qualified participants and the grandfather rule for members retired prior to January 1st, 1990. Who will be presenting on this item?
Chair Horowitz, I will be Payment Deputy Director. So this resolution is setting the COLA rate for qualified participants impacted by 415B. This is done annually. If a member joined the system prior to January 1st, 1990, they are considered a qualified participant under IRC 415B rules. Their retirement allowance cannot be lower than what they would have received under the system rules as of October 14th, 1987. And back in 1987, the COLA rules were different than they are today. COLA was set by the board annually and was based on the CPI, December over December for the prior year. So in this instance, 2021 to 2020, subject to a maximum of 3%. Since the 2021 December over December CPI rate was 4.2%, the COLA rate being declared in this resolution is 3%.
And I would assume this affects a very limited number of retirees.
That is correct.
Are there any questions from trustees on the COLA rate to be approved? All right, do we have a motion then to accept the COLA presented by city staff, retirement staff?
And
So moved.
for the record, it's attachment 5E2 is the resolution that is seeking approval.
Okay,
So I'll move attachment 5E2.
Okay, we have a motion from trustee Linder, a second to approve item 5E2.
Oh, I second it. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, trustee Jennings.
Okay. We'll give
Yeah.
that one to Vice Chair Jennings.
Oh.
It was seconded by Vice Chair Jennings. Any discussion on the motion before the board? Any public comments? We'll have a roll call vote. Trustee Chandra?
Aye.
Trustee Orr?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings?
Aye.
Trustee Linder?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. It passes unanimously. All right, number 5F, update on strategic communications. Ms. Heyman, I believe the floor is
Thank you.
yours now.
Thank you again, Barbara Heyman, Deputy Director for ORS. This memo has given you an update on the communication activities that were part of the board's strategic communication plan. The attached timeline shows the planned activities through June 30th, 2023. And we plan on providing an update roughly every 6 months. The last update provided was in August 2021. And the activities planned up to December 2021 included the development for a contract for videography as needed, plan to produce informational educational videos, provide additional webinars, further build on our health fair, add a chat feature to our website, and implement the social media. I have to report, unfortunately, the pace of progress does continue to be impacted by vacancies in our IT as well as our benefits division and the training of new staff. So as regards the development of the contract for videography, we have not developed a contract. However, staff have started the work needed to develop and review scripts for the videos and webinars. For our plan to produce educational information videos, ORS is currently working, as I say, on scripts, and the use of an outside contractor is being considered for producing those videos when the time comes, when the scripts are finalized. For additional webinars, we have held a series of webinars, including our retirement group counselling, in addition to our retirement planning workshops. And we're planning on developing, but they haven't actually been developed yet, additional webinars. Currently, the ones that are available on the website cover topics related mostly to insurance, for open enrollment, vision, and dental. As I said, for additional webinars, we're hoping, we have not been able to finalize any yet, but we have plans to include ones on transitioning to Medicare, thinking of retirement, reporting a death, divorce, and reciprocity, which are very popular topics. For the adding of the chat feature, we have not implemented that yet due to staffing. As part, though, of the upcoming budget for 22-23, ORS is requesting additional resources for the benefits group. And once those resources would be trained, they'll help provide the additional support to handle increasing incoming member requests. The posting of the state of the retirement system address video, we're planning on creating that video later this year. It has not been created yet. Other activities that were completed during the period, we have continued to do our retirement connection newsletter. and we publish that via multiple channels, including our website and mail and email. The next newsletter will be published in April of 2022. Email blasts, we have continued to use our email when appropriate, most recently with our open enrollment activities. And we'll continue to try and identify opportunities to distribute information via email to our retirees and members. For the social media, we did launch the Facebook and Twitter accounts last May 2021.
Barbara, I think you're cut out. Hello? Barbara, have we lost you?
Probably. I did find something. I know we're going to wait for her to come back. I had a similar thing happening to me, and for those who have modems that use or whatever for internet purposes, if you look at, a lot of times we do rental, right, of equipment. A lot of times we just don't buy them outright. But if you upgrade your equipment, sometimes these things are old and they've been in your house for a while and they start wearing out. I had Comcast come out and install a new one for me, and much better. And you don't think about it. It's just like something you use all the time. But I do recommend anyone having those issues. It took like, I talked to 4 different people before it was like, oh, maybe you need to upgrade your equipment.
I'm sorry, did I get disconnected?
Yes, you were.
You
At
did,
what point
just at the beginning of your presentation.
That's not nice.
Don't say that.
Don't do that.
No.
At what point?
You
what was
were
the last?
talking about social media, the Facebook and Twitter accounts, I believe.
Yes, that's what
Oh, okay, yes. So, okay, so we did launch our social media last May, May 21, and we continue to post regularly to the Facebook and Twitter account, usually about 3 to 5 posts weekly. And we're slowly seeing increasing engagements for the Facebook and Twitter. And as part of the planned activities for the next period, we're going to try and maximize opportunities to promote our social media to see if we can build on those engagements. And that concludes the updates on the activities for the last 6 months. I did also want to give you an update on our Marty Boyer, who is the board's approved communication consultant, and she provides content ideas for social media, and she also contributes to our newsletter. The budget approved for her activities for the current fiscal year was $25,000, but to date we've only actually spent $8,400 through to January, and that concludes this update.
Okay, thank you. Questions from trustees? I know I am curious for the chat feature you plan to implement. So that will be staffed by ORS staff responding directly to people chatting in. I know on many websites it has chat function, and it seems like it's an outsource to some other third party. So
we would be planning to use staff, just because basically they would need to have plan knowledge of our budget structure.
Yeah, I don't think it would be very effective to have a third party on this type of chat. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
No, Mr. Chair, but I do want to take this opportunity on your questions and Barbara's response. That again, we expect to have staff involved on the chat, but one of the challenges that we have to turn that on is we have to have the staff available And it just has been a challenge, not only with the vacancies, as you heard me on the benefits side, where there's still some positions that are either vacant that we're trying to fill in, but also some that may become vacant in the near future. And as part of that, we also the new budget is requesting three new benefits positions, not directly related to the chat function, but the ability to us to spread out the work and have more supervisory duties at the office, which we hope would allow us at some point to make that chat function more available and having staff more time to respond. So it's something that we really want to get to it, but at this point it's been quite a challenge with the staff challenges that we have encountered over the years, and now we are looking to add more positions in the benefit side. Thank you.
Are you all totally wedded to the idea of the chat function? And the reason I ask is because it can really create a lot of unintended consequences, at least from some of the experiences I've seen in different business models. So one suggestion I want to float out there, if you are wedded to the idea of a chat, is that automated function where it goes to all sorts of data points first. And that kind of, shields you, because I really feel like, I guess my 2 cents is I don't feel good about the team becoming sort of really enmeshed. And I'm sure you'd feel the same as a chat business, because people can just go wild and then they just go pretty extreme, I think, in terms of their reactions and opinions. So just to share, I'm sure you thought about this, but
fair point. Yes, no, fair point. We appreciate it, and at this point we're not really married to it. I mean, we certainly will look at the options, but I think that's a very, very good point. So thank you. Barbara, any thoughts?
I'd like to echo that concept. If staff itself is responding to chats, and I think that would be required for it to be effective at all, it sounds like it could be rather disruptive to the staff's day as they're working through. I don't think we'd have such a huge volume of chats that you would assign a person to it. So they'd be working on something and then all of a sudden they have to go, dislocate themselves, chat, and then get back to their work. So it's an ambitious goal, I think, that may be difficult to implement effectively.
Yeah. Again, good point. I think if we're ever going to go that route, we will designate specific times for different staff to be available for the chat, so that I don't have to go back and forth between the regular duties and the chatting. But at this point, it's all again, it's a plan. So certainly we welcome any, just like you just did, any input, and we will keep you posted on the updates every 6 months. So thank you.
Any other trustee questions or comments?
Well, one thing that I heard, and I would think, Roberto, you might have an idea on this, is that we're kind of looking at a 60% 60% of city staff is going to be eligible for retirement coming up, I think, in the next year or so. And so kind of like a silver tsunami, as they kind of want to say, and in that case, I can see the need for additional staffing if that's going to be hitting your workload. Is that something that you're aware of?
I have to be honest. I was not aware of a 60% of the city staff will be available for retirement. The 3 new staff positions that we are going to be seeking, I don't think includes that consideration. In fact, our benefits function hasn't added any positions in almost 10 years, but the number of members has increased, as well as the programs and the benefit structure has become considerably more complicated. 10 years ago, we only had just tier 1. So it's a combination of things, right? So yeah, that would be something.
You might want
else.
to look at that, and maybe, I don't
Yeah.
know if that's something Kyron can do. I wear 2 hats, and so, you know, I'm on the retirement board, but I'm also president of the camp union, and that has been numbers that our union has thrown out. And again, I haven't seen the numbers behind it. I don't know, you know, but that's kind of what they have seen through their analysis.
Well,
I would
thank you.
think you guys have better numbers, though, I would hope. Barbara, you were going to say something?
No, I was just interested to hear what you were saying. And I'm interested in the source of the information, but you've now mentioned.
And I mean, I can ask and have them, if this is okay with Roberto. I try not to reach down to staff, but if it's okay with Roberto and if I can come up with that, I'd be happy to forward it to Barbara. Would that be okay?
Yes, of course, please. Yes, anything helps.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? Any public comments? All right, thank you, Ms. Heyman, for the update. And we'll move forward to 5G. And I believe Council Chin has something to say here.
I sure do. So as this board knows, there's the AB 361 abbreviated teleconferencing procedures for under the Brown Act that allows you to meet virtually without complying with the full Brown Act requirements for teleconferencing attendance at meetings. One thing before I go into it is to kind of lay out some comments for the board, which is that for the state agencies, the AB 361 protections is set to expire on the end of March, I think March 31st. That expiration of that date does not apply to local agencies such as us, but it does give the governor an opportunity to revisit the proclamation of the state of emergency. So if the governor decides as that deadline approaches for the state agencies to lift the proclamation for the state of emergency, that would take away one of our fundamental factual findings required for us to utilize the AB 361 abbreviated teleconferencing procedures. So I know there may be buzz around it. There's no firm indication one way or the other whether or not the governor will lift that proclamation, but I did want to just advise the board that that may be a possibility. And so come time in April, we'll certainly meet at the next meeting virtually, and we'll get, as we get closer to that date, we'll get a better sense of where things may stand. So with that background, I am going into what Roberto likes to call the Maytag show, which is to provide you the background information for the factual findings necessary to allow this board to continue to meet virtually under AB 361 for the next 30 days. Currently, the governor's proclamation for the state of emergency due to COVID-19 continues to be in place, and the city council continues to recommend social distancing by their recent resolution. So with those two factual findings, if this board makes those findings by a majority vote, this board may continue to meet under AB 361's abbreviated teleconferencing procedures up until its next meeting within the next 30 days.
So do I have a motion to adopt these two factual findings? To use AB 361's abbreviated teleconferencing procedures for the next 30 days for this board?
Yes, Trustee Chandra makes that motion.
We have a motion from Trustee Chandra. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Trustee Linder. Any discussion? Any public comment? We will have a vote. Trustee Chandra.
Aye.
Trustee Orr.
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings.
Aye.
Trustee Linder.
Aye.
And I vote aye. The motion is adopted.
Thank you.
Sorry for that momentary pause. We have committee reports. it says investment committee. It said last meeting, February 18th. That's
Yeah,
actually tomorrow.
Yeah, I was
The
going to
next
say that's
meeting is February 22nd.
that's an interesting last meeting. Is tomorrow. Yeah, we're meeting tomorrow, so we can resume the AB 360 if necessary, and then we'll have a full formal meeting on the 22nd where we discuss asset allocation and some other topics. And of course, the asset allocation discussion will come to the full board. And there's no update from the February 18th meeting.
Okay, back to the future, as it were. Governance committee, I believe the last meeting was merely a special meeting to adopt 361. Is there anything to report from the chair of the governance committee?
No, there's not.
Very good. Is the chair of the audit committee now with us?
No.
No, he's still not with us, Mr. Chair, and certainly we have a scheduled meeting after this meeting for the audit committee. I reached out to him. I'm waiting to hear back from him.
Okay, it looks like the last meeting was a special meeting again, and the next meeting will simply be a special meeting. So
Right, there's nothing to report. I do attend
nothing to
that.
report.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
great. On to item 6.4, the joint personnel committee did have a meeting. And so Chair Orr, do you have something to report to us?
Yeah, the joint personnel committee met. We reached a resolution on the CEO sort of policy and process. We will be revisiting further the CIO policy and process documentation. So we're moving along.
Right, and so we don't need a vote to receive and file the minutes, but I do believe we need a discussion and action on the proposed CEO performance process that was discussed and approved by the committee. It needs to be adopted by the full board.
That is correct.
Okay, so do we have, there are 4 attachments, but we have just a single vote to adopt the policy and procedures?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so
there's a cover memo that explains the evaluation process. Then there's the red line that shows the revised revisions there. And then I believe the next 2 are the clean copies of the documents.
Right. And just to summarize, we've looked at these cover memo and the procedures and policy before. I think the procedures were further refined in the last meeting to reduce the number of questions in the survey somewhat. And that's what the final version that is redlined under 6.4C2 includes. So saying that, is there a motion to adopt this proposed policy and procedures for the CEO performance process?
So moved.
We have a motion from Trustee Orr. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Trustee Linder. Thank you. Any discussion on the policy and procedures for CEO performance? Any public comment or questions? Okay, so hearing none, we will have a roll call vote. Trustee Chandra?
Aye.
Trustee Orr?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jennings?
Aye.
Trustee Linder?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. It passes unanimously. The Calipers General Assembly is coming up here in early March. And also the Calipers Advanced Principles of Pension Governance Trustees. I saw a note from Linda that it is still possible to sign up for that up to February 28th.
Yes, it is.
Can I ask a quick question? And those are both still in person, no hybrid?
That's correct. That's in person.
Okay.
Okay, I have a feeling that answers that question for some trustees. Moving on, any proposed agenda items?
Mr. Chairman, Harvey Lederman.
Yes, Mr. Lederman, proceed.
So normally we, just in terms of looking at the rest of the calendar for the year, Maytag and I would like to schedule our annual fiduciary training for the board at a time that the board feels is appropriate. but I'm wondering whether or not we should wait for the additional vacancy first to be filled, or how you would like to time that.
I believe it is filled. It's filled with, unless she
it is filled, but she's
Yeah.
still out on leave.
leave until
I have
end of
to
March.
check. Yeah, I don't know if her leave ends mid-March or end of March. If
It's the end of March.
If it's, thank you, Linda. If it's end of March, Harvey, I would recommend April, so that at least we have a full board, hopefully in attendance that day.
Yeah.
That certainly makes sense to me. So we can expect our new trustee at the April meeting. And so she will miss the strategic asset allocation discussion at the March meeting. Okay. Are there any other public or retiree comments? So hearing none, I would like to say that we are adjourning this meeting in memory of Dwight Jennings, the husband of Vice Chair Jennings. Want the Vice Chair to know she has our deepest sympathy. And although it's not my place to speak on behalf of the board, I'm sure I do when I say we have enormous condolences and for your sudden loss.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We were married 40 years and we lived together 42 years. So he was someone I was with for quite some time. And I can just say that he passed the way he wanted to. It really, his heart just stopped and he just died. And he died at his table with his coffee there. And that's how he would have want to go. It's just something like that is shocking to everyone, including the family. He was only 74. So it will take time, but I am a person who likes to be busy and kind of keep my mind going. And so I have had so many heartfelt condolences, and I really do appreciate it. It means a lot to me. So thank you all. Okay.
You have our deepest sympathies.
Thank
So
you.
in honor of Dwight Jennings, this meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
I believe.